RLCraft is the most well-known Minecraft mod pack in existence. It was my first mod pack and is the entire reason I got into this community. I used to speedrun it even. But is it actually good? Well, I played it through back in February. The video for that just dropped if you want to check it out, by the way. I would super appreciate it because I spent weeks on it. And I have a lot of thoughts. As always, we'll talk through performance, progression, and then any major downfalls or highlights I feel like pointing out, as well as my own opinions. As for performance, given that RLCraft is a mod pack on an older version, 1.12.2, it's pretty obvious that it won't really be that great on lower end systems. However, as somebody that played it back in 2019 on a 10-year-old Mac that didn't even have HDMI support, I can confidently say it's made strides in this area. Performance still isn't fantastic, especially because of better foliage, but you can disable the mod entirely. And you can do that in-game too, you don't have to do it before you launch. Personally, I just disable the bushy leaves, and that alone gives a huge boost to frame rate. On my PC pre-upgrade, this pack ran around 120 on average, with some stutters and issues, though they weren't major. On my PC post CPU upgrade, I was sitting between 500 and 600 FPS without shaders, and that's with the specs you'll find down below in the description. For lower end systems, I recommend disabling better foliage entirely to get a good boost, as I said before. Quick note on visuals for the pack: if you're like me and don't like the original Lycanite models, there is a resource pack called Lycanite Redux that remodels them and helps blend them into the game a bit better. I don't think the original models are bad, but I prefer the cohesion this offers. Moving on, RLCraft has 0 to hero style progression. Your spawn point is randomized, and you now have to worry about temperature and thirst, and you have to worry about everything else around you. You start as this little frail human that can barely withstand any sort of damage in a world surrounded by a lot of fantastical creatures that can kill you by breathing on you. This is in part thanks to the limb health system it has, meaning if you get shot or hit in the head, or if your body takes too much damage, you will die regardless of how much health you have remaining. This also means you can break limbs, giving you debuffs like slowness and/or weakness. So a helmet and chestplate become a huge priority for you in the early game once you get through the flint tool progression. You'll also notice 2 skill trees, one for upgrading your skills and letting you wear certain tiers of armor and use certain tools, and one for giving you buffs and bonuses based on the level you're at with them. You need level 8 attack to use iron weapons, for example, in the first tree, and then you can initialize your other tree by choosing combat, mining, or crafting to get additional experience points. Once you choose, that unlocks your other one, giving you access to a new set of things to level and new skills to pick from. So you need XP, and a lot of it. And that's where the many battle towers and dungeons come into play. It'll be a challenge for sure, but getting the loot and XP from there is your best bet. You also need shelter before night falls, especially if you got unlucky and spawned in an extreme biome to make your temperature an immediate issue. Being out at night is pretty much a death sentence when you're early in progression, largely due to skeletons, infernal mobs giving monsters crazy buffs and powers, and then Lycanite mobs as well. Once you've torn your way through some towers, you can start spending your skill points and leveling yourself up, continuously getting stronger and stronger until you can stand a good amount of damage. You'll be able to pick and choose equipment once you have more resources, allowing you to drop things that don't have a good quality on them. You'll notice that you've been finding these things called baubles in the towers and dungeons you're going through, and you should be equipping these, trading them off if you find duplicates with better traits, just like you should do with your armor. Quick side note, you can also split off into Lycanite progression here, such as with their summoning system or their taming system. You need knowledge rank 2 to summon or tame anything, so I highly recommend a soul gazer and then trapping an Aegis or whatever summon you want while the gazer is on cooldown so you can use it repeatedly. Bonus points if you can find a special variant, since it offers more XP per soul gaze. For tameable mobs, you can repeatedly use their specific treat to gain knowledge as well, or you can use the method I just described. I find here, after I have diamond armor, is about when I want to go for a flying mount. Once you have this, the playthrough becomes a lot easier since you're exposed to a lot less mobs while exploring. I personally opt for a Lycanite mount since they can respawn. You do have to use a soulstone on them to make them respawn, but it's very worth it. Usually this would be in the form of an avian type such as a rock or a Raikou. Be sure you make enough treats, especially if you don't have enough knowledge rank to tame them. You'll also need a saddle, which will be specific to the type of mount you tamed. You need troll drops for it, and a little tip for finding those to make the saddle would be going into Lycanite dungeons. As long as you're in the correct biome for trolls to spawn, they're gonna spawn everywhere. I think the main reason they don't spawn in the caves as much as I see in other mod packs is because the caves are too small and too narrow, because they're not really updated the way that they are in other 1.12.2 packs. Then you'll want to reforge and enchant things, which will require you to have both reforge tables, an enchantment table, an anvil, and a disenchantment table. Reforging isn't really the hard part, since you being at that stage normally means you have a lot of extra resources available for it. Baubles can be a bit more difficult since you need the essence stuff for some of them, but regardless. Then it's onto enchanting, and to get the best enchants you have like a few options, mainly two. Explore and find this specific dungeon type which spawns with another floor full of incredibly difficult enemies that can drop crazy gear, or you can explore villages that have a library building for their enchantments. In order to make use of the first one, you need a disenchantment table, and then an honorable mention as a source of enchantments would be the quad towers, since their library room can contain some pretty good ones. I got mending from there in my last playthrough. The armor tiers are also pretty interesting, and you've got a lot of options once you've passed diamond, since there are so many dragon and sea serpent color variations. Ultimately, I think the best armor in the pack is golem armor, but that is super endgame because the crafting recipe is randomized every playthrough, and you need items from every aspect of the world. You also need a rune reader thing too. It's good to save loot that sometimes feels really random because of this. I never really go for golem armor and have only gotten it once, so feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Then, once you think you're prepped and ready for bosses, you'll want to look into the Lycanite foods and buffs they offer. I also recommend watching others fight the bosses to learn from their mistakes, and looking at their wiki pages. A grappling hook, ender pearls, an enchanted medkit, carrot juice, and battle burritos are all items I'd recommend taking with you on top of your weapons and other things. And that's about as much as I'll go into our summary of progression. So let's talk through my personal thoughts and things I think the pack does poorly and does well. My biggest issue with RLCraft is that there's just a huge knowledge gate on the mod pack. If you don't know much about it and you aren't the type to look at the wiki, then this is not a good choice for you. They have improved this over the years, and a lot of RLCraft is you learning by dying, but it's still the biggest barrier to entry with the pack. I think had I not been super into content made by the likes of Union and Sneak Snag and then later on Forge Labs, I wouldn't have ever gotten into this pack as much as I did. I think the pack would benefit greatly from an in-game JEI tooltip page, which would help rectify the wiki dependence. Raspberry Flavor does this for the special weaponry it has, and I think this would be specifically beneficial when it comes to baubles and things. Like even just a little tip on how to find them, or like some sort of, oh, I hear they spawn here if you're going like the Lost Traveler notes kind of route. I wish Create existed for 1.12.2 because being able to have custom ponders for Lycanite altars in-game would be peak, even if it meant disabling the rest of the Create mod just for that one thing. Generally, I think that is one thing that this pack would benefit greatly from if there is a way to do ponders in 1.12.2. If there is, I'm unfamiliar with it because I don't play a lot of other older packs. Performance is also a bit of an issue for lower end computers, though with the addition of entity culling and other various changes made in 2.9.3, this is much less of an issue now than it used to be. World generation is also so much better than it used to be, but it's still a bit weird. I've gotten a dungeon spawning on top of a battle tower, a Lycanite dungeon spawning intertwined with a mineshaft, and this big structure still does this when it spawns. I love the solution they did for the one ocean structure you can come across, and would love to see some other fixes for these structures as well. I also don't like that the player has such a big chance of spawning at the bottom of the ocean, but if I remember correctly, there isn't really a way to fix that at the moment. Speaking of structures, the disenchantment table recipe really needs a revisit. Requiring 2 golden bookworm scales is straight up criminal, especially with the rarity of gold bookworms and how rare the structure that spawns with them in the end is. I was stuck searching for it for actual real life hours over multiple sessions of playing because I was getting unlucky with breeding them. I feel like if you're going to make it that hard to make a disenchantment table, I should be allowed to pull all of the enchants off of armor, or at least be able to pick what enchant instead of being stuck only able to pull the top one off. I would have a lot less complaints if I was able to actually pick what enchantment I wanted. I also feel RLCraft walks a very fine line in regards to how it's balanced. It was made by Shivaxi as a joke, for starters, and blew up because of content creators getting funny clips out of it. It was never meant to go where it did, and I'd argue that's a huge part of what makes it so fun. So that's why I raise concern about overbalancing. I was a speedrunner for 2.8.2, and I know that 2.9.3 made a lot of balance changes that were good for the mod pack, but simultaneously killed the speedrunning community, and also got rid of a lot of mechanics that I thought were pretty fun. So far, I think a good job has been done here for the most part, but I will always miss chucking golems off of towers. My final bit of criticism for the pack would be around the Lycanites mod and its implementation in certain aspects. Mainly that the Lycanite mobs that spawn in the Nether and End are insane. Spawn rates are far too high and the mobs hit too hard. I really think it sucks that almost every time I encounter a mob that has a charge they can throw at me, it hits me in the head. These guys have aimbot, bro. It's literally impossible to traverse the End without a flying mount, and it's pretty much the same story for the Nether. While I was fighting Rehovart, I was challenged more by the random mobs that kept spawning as a part of normal Nether spawns than by the boss himself, and I think that's pretty silly. I also think it shouldn't be possible for bosses to spawn as infernal or any sort of special trait without the use of one of the special keys. Mob events are also a bit overwhelming, but my main issue with them is the one called Eruption. It's so much worse than all the rest and can result in an entire base being destroyed because of that one Lycanite mob that can turn wood and cobblestone to lava. I either disable it or mob events entirely when playing because of that one event. As for highlights, I love the structures I came across, especially in the end. The end battle tower, beautifully done. Like I mentioned earlier, the wall solution around the island structure, amazing, love it, give me 10 of them. I love the way the Modpack plays. Going from being so powerless to being able to run it down in one of the most dangerous dungeons is genuinely so satisfying, and this pack truly caters to my loot goblin brain. I used to really hate that waystones were so difficult to craft, but I think it's really interesting because it makes other methods of travel more favorable. The changes made to flying mounts had me a bit annoyed at first, but I understand that it kind of serves the same purpose. And being forced to interact with the world a lot more is good overall, and made me engage with mechanics I had previously bypassed almost in their entirety. The addition of an ice dragon's eye had me literally shrieking with joy when I saw it. It was something I had been hoping for since I started playing the mod pack, and I'm sad I didn't ever wind up getting one or using one in my recent playthrough because I never saw an ice dragon, unfortunately. I also really love the fact that the mod pack isn't an FPS bomb when you're in dungeons anymore thanks to entity calling. It was such a big issue in the past, and if you ever play older versions, you'll notice the performance is significantly worse. So while it could be better, it's definitely made noticeable strides. It also inadvertently patched a kind of broken strat, spamming F3A to keep reloading chunks and see through walls. And one thing I love the most about the pack is that no playthrough I've ever done has felt the same. Infernal and blighted mobs might be annoying and scary in the early game, but they stop the player from completely stomping at a certain point, and I love that about them. The changes to the summoning and taming system are also really good, since being able to just breathe near an Aegis and then summon them led to me stomping towers way earlier than I should be able to. Durability on the Lycanite tools was also a really good change. Plus, I actually tried using the other summoning staffs and wound up sticking with one other than the default during my playthrough, and that's the first time I'd ever done that, and that was thanks to the Aegis nerfs. This mod pack holds a special place in my heart. Clicking play on it all those years ago genuinely changed the trajectory of my life, and it's largely responsible for why I'm a content creator and why I'm in the modded Minecraft space at all. So thank you to the developers, and thank you to the content creators that put out content that drew me into this community and made me find my passion. Now, I hear you typing in the comments as we near the end of the video. What about Dragora? I don't know, I haven't played it yet.